If you were with us during the month of May, you may remember that we spent some time talking about how we could transform our lives by the renewal of our minds. The verse from Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Now, when we talked about this, the renewing of our mind was literal. We learned that we can develop new neural pathways in our brain. I mean, we can actually kind of rethink our brains. We can redevelop them. We learned how 12 minutes of prayer, intentional prayer a day, can develop our frontal cortex. So we were talking about the literal transformation of our mind and how that helps lead us to better places of thinking about life or how to live out our faith. It leads to the transformation of our lives. This month we are going to move from the head to the heart. And we're going to talk about how to develop healthy habits for our heart. Now, unlike the May series, Winning the War of Our Mind, we're not going to talk about how to renew the heart muscle. We're not going to talk about, how to develop new habits like diet and exercise that might improve our actual heart, the muscle that pumps the blood. That's not because that's not important. It's important, and I hope you're caring for those things, but the habits of a healthy heart that we're going to talk about don't really impact the muscle that pumps the blood, but it will impact how we live our lives. And so the habits we are going to look at are self-examination, simplicity, solitude, sorrow, and learning how to slow down. For us to create new and healthy habits, we have to first understand what's currently going on in our hearts and in our life. And so the best place to start in developing new habits is to take some time to reflect and do some self-examination. How are we thinking and how are we feeling and how are we treating people? What's going on in our hearts? And my guess is that most of us would say that we are fairly good and honest people. We try not to lie. We try to do our best. And so, we're pretty good. Our heart's pretty good. But maybe that's not as true as we'd like to think it is. Because if we were really honest with ourselves, we would probably begin to see that maybe we do deceive people a little bit. When your kids ask if you can go somewhere or do something, do you ever say, "Well, I'll think about it," when you know full well that the answer is already no? "Hey, can we go to Disney World in 2 weeks?" "Well, I'll think about it." No, there's no way we're going to do that. But you don't just come out and say that. It's a little deceitful because you already know the answer, right? Friends might ask me to do something and I'll say, "Well, let me check my calendar." I shouldn't tell you this, and now I'm going to have to watch what I say, because now when I say that, you're all going to know that's code for Andy doesn't want to do it. Now, I will go and check my calendar just so that I can appear honest, but many times I already know what the answer is, but I'm just, it's a little deceitful. When I was growing up, when many of us were growing up and, something got broken in the house and your parents said, "Do you know who did this?" "Well, it wasn't me. It wasn't me." Have you ever posted things on social media to make your life look better than what it really is? And you're always posting things that's like, "Well, I'm going to take a picture of this tiny corner of my house that is all neat and clean. No one else is going to see the disaster that's over here." It's a little deceitful. Has anyone ever asked you how you're doing and you said, "I'm fine," when the reality is that everything in your heart and life has fallen apart? In small way and large ways, we are probably more deceitful than what we might admit. And the person we deceive the most, it's not your spouse, it's not your parents, it's not your kids, it's not your coworkers, it's not your neighbors or your friends, it's yourself. We lie to ourselves all the time. We tell ourselves, well, I'll do it tomorrow. And then somehow tomorrow never seems to come. We tell ourselves, I can stop anytime I want to, when the reality is that we've tried for years to stop or start or slow down or speed up, and we've never been able to. We tell ourselves that, what's happened, or the words that someone has said, the offenses that people know, have come our way. We tell ourselves, well, it doesn't matter, Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But those words do hurt. Or we tell ourselves that we really are okay. Like we try to convince ourselves when people ask us, how you doing? We say fine, and then we try to convince ourselves that we're fine. But we know deep down we really aren't. And so we deceive ourselves. We lie to ourselves all the time. In Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? The heart is deceitful. We lie to ourselves. How can we understand that? How can we change that? If we want to change our lives, we need to change our habits. If we're going to change our habits, we have to change our heart. So today we're going to ask God to start changing our heart. Help us develop a new habit that can begin to change our hearts, that will then change our lives. And we're going to ask God to help us take a solid, honest look at what's going on in our hearts. And we're going to use a prayer found in Scripture from King David. It's found in Psalm 139, and the prayer is this: search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Would you just, I'm not even going to ask you to pray it right now. Would you just say it with me? Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Because we're so deceptive and we deceive ourselves more than anyone else, we need to ask God to kind of step in. Show us the lies we've been telling ourselves over and over and over again. The choir just sang, who do you say that I am, God? Not who do I think I am, not what other people think of me, but who do you say that I am? Search my heart. And if there's anything offensive, if there's any way that's not of you, show me so that I can overcome that and begin to experience life everlasting. Sometimes we can't see the deception ourselves. Sometimes we've gotten so good at building up an image of who we think we are, good or bad, and what we need to do is say, God, search me, know me, show me who I really am. So we need a solid prayer that we can pray every day. God, search me. Know my heart. Reveal it to me so that I can confront what's there, maybe overcome it and experience new life. King David gave us this prayer, and he understood the need for self-examination. Because the lowest moment of his life came because he had been deceiving himself for so long. The first lie that David told himself was that it's okay for me to send all of my officials out to battle, but I'm going to stay home. 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men." He sent his second in command with all of his men and the whole Israelite army. But David remained in Jerusalem. The practice was for all of the fighting men to go out to battle. The practice was for the king to go with his troops, to be with them, to support them, to lead them and guide them. But David told himself, well, I don't need to go. I've traveled enough. I'm tired. I'm okay to stay home. I deserve to stay home. I need a break. I'm just going to take it easy for a while. I've got to I have to stay safe because I'm the king. I mean, if I die, everything's going to fall apart. So it's okay for me to stay home and send everyone else out. It all starts with maybe a deception we tell ourselves about the choices that we're going to make. And so David deceived himself and he stayed home. And then he told himself, it's okay for me to walk outside on the roof in the evening and look out over all of my people, even if it's the time of day when they're doing intimate things like bathing. It's okay for me to do that. I'm the king. It's okay for me to see a beautiful woman and watch as she bathes because I'm the king. She's my subject. It's okay for me to ask who she is. It's okay for me to want to meet her. It's okay for me to invite her to my palace, invite her to my room. It's okay for me to have a relationship with her. I'm the king. It's okay for me to do these things. And so he lied to himself to the point where he has an affair, and then he lies again. It's okay for me to cover this up. I'm the king, and if it was exposed, it would topple the kingdom. It would upset the work God's going to do. So I'm going to create this plan, and I'm going to get her husband to come back home, and then everyone's going to think that the baby she's going to have is going to be his, and so I'm going to cover this whole thing up, and that's okay. Of course, it didn't work that way. So then he rationalizes, well, it's okay for me to have her husband killed because it's going to save God's kingdom. And so the deception continued. And David just kept lying to himself about what was okay for him. He rationalized everything to the point where he didn't even acknowledge or understand that his sinful practice had led him to this place of adultery and conspiracy to murder. And it wasn't until a prophet came to him and literally kind of puts it in his face that he was confronted with the reality of his brokenness and sin. And it all started with a small little deception. David's deceptive heart led to tragic events that destroyed people's lives and forever altered his family. His family experienced brokenness for generations. It kept him from recognizing the reality of his own sin. Maybe that's why David wrote these words. This is from Psalm 36. He says, "In their own eyes they flatter themselves too much to detect or hate their sin. The words of their mouths are wicked and deceitful. They fail to act wisely or do good. Even on their beds they plot evil. They commit themselves to a sinful course and do not reject what is wrong." I'm wondering if David is thinking about his own life here. I flattered myself to the point where I didn't understand or see my own sin. The words of my mouth were deceitful and wicked. On his bed, he plotted evil. He committed himself to a sinful course of action, and he didn't even understand the reality of his sin or what was wrong. Maybe David was reflecting on his own downfall and his need. If only I had reflected a little earlier. If only I had seen my sin early on. If only I had confronted it then. At the very beginning, maybe things would have been different. Maybe that's why David later on gave a prayer that said, "Search me, O God. Know my heart. Test me, and if there's any way that is not of you, if there's any way that is offensive, if there is any sinful nature, if there's any sinful attitude, if there's anything that's not of you, show me so I can confront it and maybe overcome it, develop healthy habits that will lead me into more faithful living." I think David reflected on his own struggles and downfall, which is why he gave words to his people saying, "Don't do this. Don't flatter yourself to the place where you don't see your own sin. Don't plot evil thinking that it's okay. Don't commit yourself to sinful ways, but ask God to search you and to test you and to show you the sin that you want to overcome so that you can confront it and live a healthy, faithful life." Since we're so good at deceiving ourselves, when we ask God to search us, we need to be part of that process. We need to ask God to show us. And sometimes we need to be aware of how we might be deceiving ourselves, how we might be missing the mark in some areas. And so here are a few common ways that our deception might manifest itself in our lives. The first one is, are we addicted to distractions? You know, sometimes we can distract ourselves so much, and that's because we don't want to really confront what's going on in our lives. And it's so easy these days to be distracted because we have 24-hour news and entertainment, we have social media, we've got new technology. You know, we can always be doing something more and new and different. We can always be entertaining ourselves. We can always be, learning new things. It is so easy to be distracted. And we can become so addicted to the distractions that we fail to stop and reflect on what we're dealing with. Are all of those distractions just covering up a deeper need that we're just avoiding? It's very easy to avoid confronting the sin and the struggles that we face by just keeping ourselves really busy. Are we addicted to distractions? Are we manically cheerful? Manic cheerfulness. Like I'm just going to tell myself, I'm always going to smile. I'm just going to be happy all the time, no matter what someone says. Life is good. Everything is great. And I'm just going to keep telling myself that over and over and over and over. And everyone who sees me is going to be like, wow, you have it all together. I know. Because it's all good. You might know people like that. They're just always cheerful. You're like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with you? You're always cheerful. 5 in the morning, 5 at night, 2 in the morning. Yeah, always. Maybe that's masking. Not always. Some people are just, God bless them, they are joyous people and we love you. But there are those of us who are trying to hide what's really going on. There's brokenness and pain, but if I just show that I'm cheerful, then I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to confront it. I can just kind of put the mask on and pretend like everything is good. Or maybe we're critical and cynical attitude. Are you always quick to find all the faults in others, constantly criticizing what others say and do. A lot of times the people who are the most critical in a situation are the ones that are struggling with that in themselves. They're always pointing out this one particular problem in someone else because it's a deep problem in themselves and they don't know how to deal with it, don't know how to overcome it, but they're really good at seeing it. Or maybe, this cynicism, a sense of hopelessness and despair, maybe that's coming from a deeper place inside that we need to confess, that we need to confront, that we need to overcome. Now, I'm going to be honest, it can be pretty easy to be critical and cynical in our world today. But sometimes that cynical nature, like everything's just terrible and bad and it's never going to get any better, sometimes that comes from deeper places of hurt or pain, brokenness in our own hearts that we just don't want to confront. Or if you find yourself being very defensivism or defensiveness, if we're quick to say, well, everything that I'm going through is someone else's problem. It was my parents, it was my teachers, it was my coaches, my coworkers never helped me, my neighbors were all against me. I go to church, but no one really cares. It's always someone else's issue. It's always someone else's problem. My spouse doesn't understand me. My kids are, difficult. That's why I'm this way. When we're always pointing out the problems of other people, maybe it's because we don't want to acknowledge the problem that we're struggling with. Again, we've deceived ourselves. We've told ourselves it's someone else's fault. Or it's just how the world is, and it's never going to get any better. Or I'm just going to avoid it and tell everyone that I'm happy all the time, or I'm just going to get myself so busy that I don't have to deal with it. These are all mechanisms that we use to overcome the deception, to not really search our heart, to avoid the things that God is saying to us. If we want to develop healthy habits, overcome the deception that we're telling ourselves, find that good place in life, then we have to take seriously this prayer. And I'm going to tell you, if we sincerely pray, search me, O God, test me, know my heart, we pray that, God's going to show us that. And we have to be willing to confront it. We can't overcome what we're not willing to confront. You can't overcome what you're not willing to confront. And sometimes we can't confront the things that we're lying to ourselves about. We need God to show us. And if we ask God to show us, I'm going to tell you, He's going to show us. And He's going to tell us. Are we going to be willing to acknowledge the brokenness or the sin or the deception and the lies that are there? If we don't, there's an element of pride. That's what David was struggling with. I'm the king. I don't have to worry about all of this. I'm the one that's right. And I can do what I want. I heard a story this week about a man who went onto the highway, but he was going the wrong direction. And so as he's driving down the road, there are all these cars coming at him, and everyone's flashing their lights and getting out of his way. And he just kept on going and he started thinking, why is everyone going the wrong direction? Why is everyone flashing their lights at me? Like, what's wrong with them? The police had to literally shut the highway down and pull him over. And they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, what are they doing? Why is everyone driving on the wrong side of the road? And they're like, no, sir, you're the one driving on the wrong side of the road. Are people coming at you with warning lights? Are people trying to tell you that maybe there's something going on in your life and that maybe you need to address it? Is God trying to tell you something? Don't be like this man and just think everything in my life is fine. It's everyone else that has the problem. Sometimes we have to acknowledge, oh, I'm going the wrong way. There was a time when I couldn't see the problems in my own life. I've shared it before. I was a fairly new young pastor in the church, and I'd been working for about a year, and I don't think I hadn't taken any vacation. I hadn't taken even some time off. I was just working every single day. I thought I had to work every day. No one could do it but me. The church finally said, Andy, you really need to take a day off. And I was like, well, it's just really hard. We're in a busy season. There's a lot going on. And they're like, no, you really need to take a day off. And I said, well, if I'm not there, then here are the things that aren't going to get done. And they're like, no, you really need to take a day off. And I was like, well, okay, I get that. I understand that. I'll do it next week. I'll take a day off next week. But then the next week comes and I didn't do it. Friends kept pointing this out to me. It's kind of like, the flashing lights because I was going in the wrong direction. I ignored what people said. I rationalized that I couldn't do it. I should have recognized kind of the prideful attitude that was there, like I'm the only one who can do it. That's a lie. I should have recognized that, but I didn't. People kept coming at me, flashing their lights, honking their horns. Finally, a friend said to me, it's like, okay, like intervention time. They're like, okay, if you're not going to take Monday off, then I'm going to come over and I'm going to lay down behind your car in the driveway so that you can't leave. And then I got angry. Don't you do that. If I have to go to the church, don't you do that. And they're like, well, it's kind of like the police. We're shutting down the road and we're pulling you off to the side. And I was like, I finally realized, maybe if everyone else sees this problem, then I need to see it too. I slowly began to understand what my problem was and the prideful attitude that was in there. That God didn't make me to work 24/7, 365. He didn't make any of us to do that. That rhythms of rest and Sabbath rest were needed. I started taking days off and vacations to balance my life. Significantly was healthier. And I am convinced that that's what's enabled me to be 32 years in ministry and not burn out before year 5. Because I wasn't in a good path. But I deceived myself, deceived my heart. I have to do it. I'm the only one who can do it. Everyone wants me to do it. What are the habits that you need to change? What are the lies maybe that you've told yourself that you need to confront so that you can overcome? We can't change what we can't confront. We can't develop new habits until we understand how the old habits, how the unhealthy ones are not leading us into the life that we want. So take time this week to just pray. Do some self-examination. Ask God to show you your heart. Search me, God. Test me. Help me understand my anxiety, brokenness, pain, hurt. See if there's any offensive way, any sinful way, any lies that I've been telling myself. Help me confront it so I can overcome it and build healthy habits that will lead me into the way everlasting. Let us pray.